So here it is. Trump standby Huckabee after unannounced Pollard meeting. This is by Philip Wegman for Real Clear Politics. In 1987, Jonathan Pollard was sentenced to life in prison for selling national secrets to Israel. Last July, nearly a decade after his parole, the disgraced former naval intelligence analyst met with U.S. Ambassador to Mike Huckabee at the ambassador to Mike Huckabee. It should be U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee at the United States, U.S. Ambassador to Israel. The meeting, and by the way, I've seen 86. I thought it was 86 that he was finally convicted, and he was discovered to have done it in 85. So Real Clear Politics might want to double check on a couple of those things, including their grammar. But hey, everybody makes mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes on the typing. The meeting was his first with U.S. officials since his release and immigration to Israel. Don't they mean emigration from the United States? A break with precedent, the move by Huckabee, even after all these years after the crime, still alarmed intelligence officials. Well, Donald Trump, maybe you thought he was silent on it. For much of the day, I did. And I'm like, I haven't really seen any reports on what Donald Trump is saying about this. I'm going to have to go find it. So, yes, here's the Real Clear Politics piece that I found, and there are a couple other ones. I'm not going to go into those, but the Trump administration was left in the dark, they say. The White House was not aware of that meeting, they say. Trump spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt told Real Clear Politics, and you can believe her. It was reportedly left off the public schedule of the ambassador, and yet the administration still condoned the actions of the U.S. envoy to Israel. Quote, the president stands by our ambassador, Mike Huckabee, Leavitt said, and all that he's doing for the United States and Israel. I think there will be some MAGA people who get shaken off by this one, though. I think there will be some. If they're not Christian Zionists and they're just supportive of MAGA, this might be one where they say, I'm taking a second look at this. The case sent shockwaves through both Washington and Tel Aviv at the time of the conviction. The rare spy who offered his services to an ally, Pollard pled guilty, confessing to selling thousands of pages of secret documents to the Israelis for cash and selling an upside-down map of Ukraine to Macron. You didn't know about that one, did you? That was the real crime. I know that one. He tried to sell a Pizza Hut placemat to people, too, but they didn't like the stains left on it. No grease stains. Thank you. A federal judge dismissed pleas for mercy, even after Pollard's cooperation led to the indictment of an Israeli Air Force officer, because, of course, Mr. Pollard has absolutely no standards. He is an utterly unctuous character. He'll sell out anybody. The episode came at the height of the Cold War when the CIA was on the lookout for Soviet, not Israeli spies. The press had dubbed 1985 the year of the spy as President Reagan vowed to combat espionage. And, of course, it was flown back thanks to Donald Trump's good pal 30 years later. Yep, a private jet owned by late casino magnate Sheldon Adelson. Yes, indeed. So Trump is supporting him. Now, I don't know whether or not they're going to be asking in the background for Mike Huckabee to say, hey, Mike, say that you're having some problem with your gastrointestinal bypass thing that you had done and you got to leave office. Let's just do it that way. How about that, right? Maybe that's what's going on in the background. I don't know, but I just can't believe that of all things, Donald Trump is actually not firing the guy. That blows me away. But then again, Donald Trump's buddy, Sheldon Adelson, flew Pollard back to Israel. So maybe Trump smiles very fondly on Pollard. It's possible. Holy smoke. Oh, my goodness. Let me get your opinions about this, everybody. See what you think. We'll pop in for the first time, our real first chance to say hello after we got to say hi a little bit earlier, and Skunk Hollow was so kind to contribute $10 at the start of the show, and then the gods of Comcast dropped us. So I wish in a way that these sorts of things sometimes were when the cable drops out, I kind of wish it was because of my thing. Like some mistake that I had made or something like that. But, what you can do, you fight back with extra energy. You come at it like a tiger and just keep going and keep smiling. So we're in control of the whole thing right now. And That makes me happy. Just keep going with what you can control. It's good for me. Taylor Saunders, thanks for being in there. MOE, thanks for being there. And also Skunk Hollow, MOE says, F Israel. I think that puts it pretty darn well. I wish I could get your comment on the screen. Absolutely right. And that goes for all the Jewish kids at BU who used to talk about the Palestinians like animals when I was at BU and they thought I was Jewish. Yeah, F you. How about that? Yeah, I know. It's real strong 30 years later, right? Well, I didn't really know a lot about it back then. That's for darn sure. Now I know a lot more. How tragic. Just terrible. So let's cover a couple things about Israel right now, just to give you some update items on this. Human Rights Watch just cited Israel for war crimes. This time, not in Gaza. Nope. No, it's in a completely different place, and not BU. It's in the West Bank. Gee, yep. Human Rights Watch, writes Dave DeCamp yesterday. Human Rights Watch said in a report on Thursday that the Israeli military's forced displacement of Palestinians in 3 refugee camps in the northern Israeli-occupied West Bank amounts to ethnic cleansing and war crimes. The IDF began a major military offensive in the northern West Bank in January of 2025, dubbed Operation Iron Wall. So you know it's got to be good there, which began after a temporary Gaza ceasefire deal was reached. Of course, can shift our efforts over there. And of course, they never really stopped killing people inside Gaza anyway. The IDF, that was when they really started their starvation campaign. The IDF quickly displaced tens of thousands of residents of the Jenin, Tulkarm, and Nashams region of their refugee camps and began destroying many of their homes. At the time, Defense Minister Israel Katz said the Palestinians wouldn't be able to return, and he's kept that promise. Well, Human Rights Watch said that the approximately 32,000 people who've been forcibly removed from the camps have been unable to return. Quote, since the raids and forced displacement, Israeli authorities have repeatedly and uniformly denied camp residents the right to return to the camps, even though there are no active military operations taking place in the vicinity, the report said. Israeli soldiers have fired upon people trying to reach their homes, while only very few whose homes have been slated for demolition have been permitted a short window to return to collect essential belongings. Unbelievable. And it's stunning because it's so blatant and in your face that you would think that at least some of these politicians with egos would say, you know what? I don't like being used as your plaything, you egotistical, maniac, Zionist, crazy people in Israel. Let's calm it down a little bit. But they don't even do that. They just let them go. It's just stunning. And the United States just delivered its 1,000th immoral and unconstitutional aircraft carrying U.S. military supplies since October 7, 2023. This also by Dave DeCamp of Anti-War. The Israeli Military Ministry of Defense announced on Wednesday that it has received the 1,000th aircraft as part of an airlift operation delivering U.S. military equipment to Israel that began following the October 7th, 2023 attack. Is there anything that you've read in the Constitution? Can you put it up to a mirror and see something that allows for that? Again, I didn't sign it like we discussed today on David's show, as I discussed last night. You didn't sign it. I didn't sign it. It was signed. And it was forced on us by a bunch of people saying, let's sign a piece of paper to create this government. But one of the things they put in their rules was that there's only a certain amount you can do. And that has to do with the declaration of war. You can't go shipping weapons all over the place if you don't have a declaration of war. Why would you do that? There's no permission to do it. The army's not even supposed to be called up, the militia. They're not supposed to be there. They're not even, as Scott Horton pointed out, they're not even supposed to have budgets for the military that go beyond 2 years. How can they keep giving this stuff to these people? It's absolutely crazy. Absolutely nuts. And I want to tie this in to free speech, because over the past 2 nights, there's been an item I've wanted to discuss for quite a while. It has to do with Greg Abbott in Texas. So let's discuss this right now. He wants to ban CAIR and other pro-Islamic groups in the United States. These are the Council for Arab and Islamic Relations in the United States and others. He wants to ban them, and he actually said that there will not be a Muslim governor of Texas, making a reference to Mandami in New York as the mayor of New York, as if, again, there's some sort of threat to the lifestyle of the people in Texas. You know what the threat to the lifestyle of the people in Texas is? Suppression of free speech, Abbott. Did you know that? Are you familiar with that? Are you familiar with the idea that there's supposed to be freedom of religion and freedom of association? Because I don't see Mandami clamping down on freedom of association. I see you doing it, leveraging the worry about Muslim people. Is there a problem there? Yeah, I think so. A prominent Muslim advocacy organization is taking Texas to court, arguing that Governor Greg Abbott's decision to brand it a foreign terrorist organization, because they can just use the terms, just mix and match. It's sort of like Garanimals. Will the pants match the shirt? Sure, just use the same tag. Foreign terrorist organization. It doesn't mean anything. That they trample both the U.S. Constitution, this is their lawsuit, that this designation tramples both the U.S. Constitution and state law. Yeah, the Council on American Islamic Relations, America, I said Arab, American Islamic Relations, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin chapters filed a federal lawsuit Thursday seeking to overturn Abbott's proclamation issued earlier in the week. Quote, this attempt to punish the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization simply because Governor Abbott disagrees with its views is not only contrary to the United States Constitution, but finds no support in any Texas law, the group said in a lawsuit. Founded in 1994, CAIR operates 25 chapters nationwide, including a small Texas staff of 8 employees and 2 contractors, according to the filing. Quote, CAIR Texas and Texas Muslim community are standing up for our constitutional rights by directly confronting Greg Abbott's lawless attack on our civil rights, CAIR Texas said in a statement. Now, why? I don't understand. Well, actually, I do understand, because Greg Abbott has massive, massive ties to the Israeli lobby. Just like we discussed the former assistant to Ted Cruz being there with Mike Huckabee at the meeting with Pollard, Greg Abbott is almost as close to Israel as Ted Cruz is. That's the background for Greg Abbott. Massive amounts of money for his election campaign coming from the Israeli lobby. So, of course, he's going to spout off like this. Even if it comes to nothing, he'll spout off like this just to try to promote that rhetoric. Muslims, it says here in their statement, we are and will not be intimidated by smear campaigns launched by Israel First politicians like Mr. Abbott. Now, this whole America First, Israel First thing, again, I think that's very dangerous territory to be talking in that sort of language. But I understand their distinction here. I understand why they're using it. Mr. Abbott is defaming us and other American Muslims because we are effective advocates for justice here and abroad. We plan to continue exercising our constitutional rights, defending civil rights, and speaking truth to power, whether in defense of free speech, religious freedom, and racial equity here in Texas or in defense of human rights abroad. Abbott's order extended the so-called terrorist label to the Muslim Brotherhood, even though federal authorities have never classified either group as a terrorist group. The governor's decree also bars CAIR from purchasing land in the Lone Star State under a new statute aimed at curbing purchases tied to foreign adversaries. That's right. So it started with the fear-mongering about China. Remember that? Now it's gone to Arab Muslim-connected people. Where else is it going to go? When will some group that you know be part of that group that's in the outs? You can't even buy land in this state. When is it going to stop? When will people stop saying the state exists for your protection? And by your protection, we mean however we want to define it, however the heck we want to define it. And part of that protection means clamping down on freedom of association, stopping people from buying land, and broad brushing people as terrorists because we're protecting you. Sure, you too could be the target, but it's for your protection. We need to have a machine that can do this for your protection. Now give us your money. The group's filing contends Abbott relied on, quote, inflammatory statements with no basis in fact, selectively citing remarks by affiliates to paint CAIR as sympathetic to terrorism. Now, if he were a private individual, like a talk show host, and he were to cite another private individual and say, you are a terrorist, you are connected with terrorist activities, they very clearly would have an absolute case for defamation. Prove it. Have I been convicted of anything? No. Now you're going to pay me in a tortious suit because you harmed my reputation. But he's the governor of Texas. He thinks he can do whatever the heck he wants. The lawsuit we have filed today is our first step towards defeating Governor Abbott again so that our nation protects free speech and due process for all Americans, CAIR litigation director and general counsel Lena Masri said in a statement, quote, no civil rights organizations are safe if a governor can baselessly and unilaterally declare any of them terrorist groups. Now let's think about Michigan. Think about those people the FBI tried to basically corner and make up a whole case about them trying to kidnap Governor Hochul. Think about how they tried to portray Ron Paul supporters or people who had the Live Free or Die bumper stickers in the FBI. How about Catholic parents during the Biden administration? Is it possible that Greg Abbott could learn a lesson about that? Or is it just dependent upon who's in office? Now he's got a friend in office, so he thinks he can flex his muscles and start pushing down on people. It is just amazing. Final point on this. The Muslim Legal Fund of America also said it is proud to defend the constitutional rights of CAIR Texas and the right of all Texans to engage in free speech and uphold civil rights without facing lawless and defamatory attacks by Greg Abbott. Again, if he were a private citizen, he would definitely be open for a defamation suit. But since he's in government, you can't sue him because he's got liability protection, sovereign immunity. Unbelievable. Just incredible. Greg Abbott. Man, that is stunning. Again, we talked about this with Eric. It's universalizability. If people are unwilling to have some sort of standard, then why would you want to associate with them? They're so taciturn, they could be anything at any time. That doesn't make any sense. You're looking at a person through a psychological prism. You just turn it a certain way and it'll come out differently. That's insane. Just incredible. Meanwhile, Huckabee's hanging out down there with Pollard. Wow. Just amazing, amazing. The influence of the Israeli lobby is just stunning. And the people who are these Christian Zionists who buy into all this stuff, come on. Don't you know that magic isn't real? Goodness sake. He's a man. Now, I've got a couple items here on Venezuela that I want to discuss. And also, I'm going to give you a brief one on Nigeria. This is an interesting one. You might have seen that Nicki Minaj appeared at the UN on the invitation of Mike Waltz, the guy who was, with the fist pump group when they killed a bunch of innocent people in Yemen. And then he got switched over from the Trump administration's Defense Department and State Department, but over into the UN. Well, now he invited Nicki Minaj to speak about the killing of Christians in Nigeria. Of course, there are ulterior motives to trying to go after the government of Nigeria because they want to make sure Nigeria is in the pocket of the United States. A lot of mineral wealth, using it to oppose Russian influence. You know the deal. So a lot of people are wondering about Nicki Minaj appearing at the UN to speak about Christians for the United States. Someone pointed out, it might have been Natalie Morris, that Nicki Minaj isn't even an American. She doesn't have American citizenship. But regardless of that, let's look at this story because Mike Wallace is really proud that he was able to score her for the appearance. Mike Waltz reveals how Nicki Minaj joined fight against Christian persecution in Nigeria. This, of course, coming at a time when Donald Trump doesn't care about the fact that the Syrian now government of Mr. Shara has killed numerous Christians since it took over, and the United States helped put it in there. And also that Donald Trump himself probably killed dozens of Christian people in the waters of the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific with his unconstitutional, immoral strikes of fishing boats that they claim are drug boats. It wouldn't matter. They're not supposed to do it one way or the other, constitutionally or morally. But yeah, so Waltz reveals how Nicki Minaj got there to the UN. People are very excited as we see U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, joined the Faulkner Focus to expose the persecution of Christians in Nigeria and explain how rapper Nicki Minaj is lending her voice to the cause. And they got this little video segment there. Everybody's very excited about it. So you can see, here's this.
August. It's mid-November, so more people have died since this number, obviously. Islamic terrorists have slaughtered more than 7,000 in the first 8 months of this year. And since 2009, when sort of this is estimated to have begun, the annihilation of an entire population based on their faith.
Now, let's just pause there. You notice what they're doing? I noticed what they're doing too. So I decided I'd look at the murder statistics in Nigeria because I thought, you know, they seem to me to be trying to butter up Christians again. Of course they are. We know they are, right? So I said, why the U.S. is focused on Nigeria has nothing to do with Christians, and it has nothing to do with their U.S. Constitution. It also has no tie to any, except for rhetorical purposes here in the United States. It also has no tie to any standard regarding the U.S. disapproving of the slaughter of innocent people. More non-Christians have been killed there in the last year than Christians by a vast number. If they're interested in playing their atrocious and hypocritical save people from slaughter fakery, why are they only looking at Christians? There are myriad conflicts in Nigeria that have nothing to do with religion and which dominate the death rolls. A lot of terror, a lot of turf wars, total murders, 40,000 to 50,000, far exceeded religiously targeted killings. Non-Christians over the past year, mainly Muslims in northern insurgencies and banditry, account for the bulk, as Boko Haram, ISWAP primarily attack Muslim civilians. Example, 60,000 moderate Muslims killed since 2009 per Inter-Society. ACLED confirms most jihadist victims are Muslim. That's right. Now, why are they only focusing on the Christians? I don't know. One thing is that Nigeria, if you're looking only at religious killings, there are a lot of Christians who are being killed. But to only look at the religious side of it is to pull away from a lot of the other things that are happening there. So I do think that there's a problem when they're only looking at that. And I think that that's a political purpose.